Y2K, a postmodern RPG, is a game created by YIIK Studios, released on the 18th of January 2019. It's mainly notable for being rather polarising, despite it currently sitting on mostly positive on Steam. I mean, take a quick look at some of these reviews. So why am I talking about it? Well, the reason it's considered so polarising is that it's had a bit of controversy surrounding it when it was first released. I just think it's a good game that's had a few issues and doesn't deserve all the hate. So settle in, my friend, as I talk at you for the better part of an hour. Well, this may surprise you, viewer, but YIIK, a postmodern RPG, is a postmodern RPG. A JRPG specifically. Well, a JRPG-like. See, it sort of plays like a JRPG, and even hits some of the same story beats as a JRPG, but it ain't made in Japan or made by the Japanese. So, is it technically a JRPG? My sources say no. And regarding the postmodern part, maybe? I don't know, I had no idea what postmodernism actually is, so I spent some time researching it, and I still don't know what postmodernism is, so we're just going to move past that. Sorry, I don't have all the answers. So, JRPG. That means turn-based combat, stats, equipment, a colourful and diverse party of characters that you can only field so many of at a time, varied locations and enemies, and a story that starts with you going grocery shopping and ends with you killing God. Now let me explain how almost everything I just said is a lie. Turn-based combat. While it is technically turn-based, it also sorta isn't. Did you happen to play the Super Mario RPGs, where you had those little timing minigames attached to attacking and defending? And if you timed it correctly, you would do bonus damage, or take less damage. So unfortunately, YIIK has something similar. Similar, but sadly not similar enough. See, in the Mario RPGs, the minigames feel fair. They're not too easy, so it feels rewarding when you do it right, or they're also not too hard, meaning you can consistently do at least okay damage. And even if or when you whiff the minigame, you still do something. YIIK's minigames, on standard difficulty, are almost impossible to consistently hit perfect. And even if you do, the bonus damage you do on a perfect hit isn't that impressive. What makes this even better is that each minigame is different, for each attack, for each character. Better yet, your equipped weapon can determine the length of the minigame. So you'll be getting the hang of one, and suddenly it has an extra bit. Overall, the minigames are too gimmicky, require you to be rather precise to do consistent damage, and overall, they don't make the combat more fun or engaging, they make it slower, clunkier, and more of a chore than regular combat would be in the first place. It should also be noted that the minigames have changed from the 1.0 version of the game. Originally, the current version beatdown moves were the standard attacks, but since a lot of people complained that they made the combat too long, they changed it in the 1.25 patch and gave the standard attack a simpler minigame. So now people complain that the basic attacks did less damage than they used to. YIIK pointed out that you could change it back to the old way in the options. Then people complained that neither was optimal. You just can't make some people happy. Another thing they changed in 1.25, they destroyed Alex's LP toss ability, which was his best by far. You could pretty much one-shot anything, including bosses, after a certain point. And since he was a protagonist, he's always in the party. Another change was the addition of this weird elemental weakness system that never really gets explained in-game properly. But you can also turn that system off if you want to. But it's okay, because you get access to a diverse cast of unique party members. On the surface at least. In practice, only 1 or 2, maybe 3 have any real effect in combat, and the rest are just sort of there. So there's no real deep strategy for party composition. Put your best damage dealers in the party, and fill the rest of the slots with whoever you like. The leveling system gets a special award as the punishment used in the secret 10th level of Hell. In this game, when you've accumulated enough experience to level up, you don't just level up, oh no. You have to go to a save point and you go into your mind dungeon. Story-wise, you go there to train in your own mind to become stronger. Gameplay-wise, you talk to a crow, confirm that you want to level up, go down some stairs, go to a door, assign a stat, go to another door, assign a stat, go to another door, assign a stat, go to another door, assign a stat, and after all that, you've leveled up. Once. And just to slow it down even more, every 5 to 8 levels, you get a little scene where an inhabitant of your mind dungeon talks at you for a couple of minutes. The real horror starts if you ever decide to play New Game Plus, because the only thing that carries over is your experience points, not levels, experience. So you get to do that level up process up to 57 times when you get to the point that you can level up again in New Game. Hooray! The visuals are inspired by the PS1 N64 era graphics and aesthetic, with its low frame rate animations, jagged edges, and bright colours. unlike one or two other recent indie games, YIIK's visuals aren't just a way to inspire nostalgia. The game is actually set in the year 1999, so AAA games that look this way would have still been coming out. I will say that the low poly models and garish colour palette are a big reason it took me so long to play the game. I initially took one look at the screenshots and said, yeah, nah. But they've grown on me, and if nothing else, I believe them to be thematically relevant. The game also has some unique visuals, although not that unique. The entities you encounter a few times in the game do look rather striking, but are obviously inspired by the Starmen from the Mother series. There are a few other surreal visuals used, namely the Crying Eye of Providence and the Mine Dungeons, where you happen to see Vela taking a bath. Now, if you're only listening, and that made you actually look at this video, you owe me a like and a sub, you dirty-minded person. Back to the visuals, they, like most of the game, are polarizing. Either you get them and you like them, or you don't and you hate them. And finally, for those curious, the game was made in Unity. Wow, what a roller coaster. Okay, so I can't think of a time that I've been so impressed and so disappointed with the game's sound simultaneously. You've been listening to it this whole time. Some of the songs are amazing, just straight bangers. And some feel like they have real soul to them and really elevate some scenes.
Who's there? Ellie, is that you? Great, another person.
Hey, I can leave if you like.
No, please stay. I've been pretty lonely here.
Where is here, anyway?
Oh, Rory, you are so wrong. So wrong.
Can't you see her too? That's my sister. That's Carrie.
Oh shit! It's an entity! We need to get the hell out of here!
I even have a few of them on one of my regular playlists. Some are just noise. Like, they don't add anything, they're too loud and drown out dialogue and battle sounds, and frankly, they just plain annoy me. That might be the point, but I can't say for certain. But the individual songs are made by a group of different composers, which goes a long way in explaining the difference in quality across the OST. There were new tracks added in version 1.25, and the overall quality is better, but there are still a few tracks that fall flat. But music tastes are subjective, and this is only my opinion. And at the end of the day, the theme music, or leitmotif, if we're being fancy, of the game is catchy, enjoyable, and unique. So it gets my seal of approval. Okay, look, from what I can tell, the VAs themselves range from professionals and industry veterans to merely okay, with some of the main cast only having one or two other roles as voice actors. Most of them did what they could with what they had. I mean, the script does have a few odd lines, but whoever directed the VAs and whoever did the audio mastering, I don't think it's crazy to say that they should be fired. There are some lines where the VAs just sound bored, but it's supposed to be a serious, emotional scene.
Oh, great, now you're mute. Look, I'll swing into town in the morning and see if they have this record, this mystical Ultima LP legend or whatever.
Or vice versa, where the VA is putting their heart and soul, their everything, into a friendly discussion about music or something.
Does it have to be on vinyl?
I don't really care. I suppose I'd prefer it'd be more of an authentic sound, you know?
Yeah, but only if you're playing from a tube amp. You have a tube amp, right?
If you don't, it's like you're only hearing half the song.
Dude, you get it!
This problem becomes even more apparent when the lines sometimes jump in volume.
Maybe dreaming. I have a lot of dreams. Things I want to happen. Now if only they'd be grounded in reality.
The writing though? Yeesh. Sometimes it's pretty good. Not great, but good. Other times though, it sounds like an 8th grader trying to hit a word count by showing off their vocabulary. The worst offender by far is Mr. YIIK, and it makes sense for his character. It doesn't make it any better, but it does explain why to an extent. He isn't the only one to do this, however. Off the top of my head, Vela, Rory, and Spoiler all do this as well, just less often and in a less annoying way, as Alex's overly verbose rants mostly happen inside his head to himself. The reduced monologue setting is supposed to help with this, but its effects were limited to the first chapter of the game. Putting all that aside, most of the time I found the voice acting fairly enjoyable and pretty good at conveying the story. Okay, don't worry, I won't be going into the story in depth till later. I'll let you know before any major spoilers. So, it's April 4th, 1999, and Alex Eggleston, no, his name is not Alex YIIK, despite the fact that most of the community calls him that, and I will continue to refer to him as such, has just got off the bus to return to his childhood home after finishing his liberal arts degree.
Great! What do you do with that?
After getting reacquainted with his old town and home, Alex finds a note from his mother asking him to go get groceries. Along the way, he finds a cat and pets it, which prompts the cat to steal the note with the grocery list, so naturally, Alex chases after it, which leads him to an abandoned factory. After exploring for a bit, Alex comes across a young woman, Sammy Park, looking for her cat Dali. Alex notes that she seems a bit odd, saying she lives in the factory and not knowing what elevators are. After finding her cat and defeating her roommate, the robot Wilhelm, the pair are riding an elevator when it shudders to a halt, the doors open, and beings made of stars pull Sammy into the void while she cries blood and begs Alex not to let them take her. Alex promptly sprints home. And so begins Alex's mission to find Sammy, or at least what happened to her. His quest takes him across the land, meeting a host of colourful characters and party members. There's Michael, Alex's childhood friend, who's such a fan of photography, he hits enemies with his digital camera. Vela, an insightful guitar player who works at the arcade. Rory, a pacifist whose defining feature is that he's sad. Claudio, a massive weeb who owns a chain of music stores. Chandra, Claudio's sister, who's the sour to her brother's sweet. And spoilers.
Yes, I am down. Let's do this.
Okay, so my first attempt of this part was 8 pages long in an 18-page draft, so I'm going to do my best to speedrun this. Try to keep up? Okay, here we go. So, Alex arrives home, meets Sammy, loses Sammy. Next day, go back, bump into Michael, long time no see. Wanna come? Sure, let's go. Oh shit, Soul Survivor, run away. And is in 1999. Girl bend reality? Must see. Come up and find Sammy, okay? Soul Survivor in-house. Chase, play record? Okay, no record. Must find record. Hi Claudio and Chandra, help us find record. Record in Vela's head? Oh no! Go in Vela's head, find record, play record. See robot. Must find robot. Find robot. Alex go into robot's mind. Robot name Essentia. Essentia same soul as Sammy and Vela, but from different reality. And Alex will blow up the world. I'm yiking out! Leave Essentia's mind. 5 days in real world. Mum's mad. No chicken nuggets for you. Decide to train to stop Alex. Get buff. Get kissy. New Year's Eve. One of 2 endings. Ending 1. Go to see ball drop. Reality is really broken. Essentia says it's been like this for a while now. Good job finally noticing. Go to see ball drop. Meteor with Alex's face comes crashing down. Party start yiking out before they remember everything. Fight Meteor, lose to Meteor. Alex goes to Soul Space, shits fuck, finds the player, yes you. Find Proto Alex and Ascension 995. Try to fight, die. Come back, decide to give them the electric chair instead. You, the player, are the only Alex left. Everything's good, game over. Second ending now. Leave house, see Sammy. Turns out she was hiding there the whole time. Check Anism 1999, secret post from Dev, says find other ending. Go to KNN, where Sammy worked, do menial tasks, find Sammy, says she was never Essentia, live this reality and explore beyond together. Aww, story over. Okay, so YIIK developer Axe Studios has been accused of plagiarism a couple of times. The big one is a paragraph that a character called Proto-Woman says to Mr. YIIK. The paragraph in question has lines from Haruki Murakami's After Dark. A Redditor thought that the speech stood out because Proto-Woman's dialogue was noticeably better than most of the game's writing. The dev's response to this was that the novel was seeping into reality from Alex's subconscious, who has read the book. For what it's worth, I do believe it was supposed to be an homage or a reference, and not malicious. Anyway, the other alleged plagiarism is a few definitions of words in game, one being of the Eye of Providence, also known as the All-Seeing Eye, and the symbol of the Illuminati, which are very real and probably watching you right now, being said by Proto-Woman again, which, as far as I'm concerned, lends further credence to the statement that she's an in-universe, otherworldly figure which has knowledge beyond the character's means, or something. The other definitions are of the word metaphysics and of principles of metaphysics, which appear very similar to the definitions on Quizlet. Well, how do you write a definition for a word you don't understand? Look, I'm not excusing these things, I'm just saying there's a reason for them. Not a good reason, but a reason nonetheless. In an update after release, YIIK added a list of references, quotes, and homages on the title screen. They credit Merriam-Webster Dictionary instead of Quizlet, but they probably did get the definitions from the dictionary. The funny thing is that out of all these news articles reporting on the alleged plagiarism, only a couple of them have anything original to say. The rest of them sound almost identical. I'm sure it's an homage or a parody, and certainly not plagiarism. Hoo boy, I might get death threats on my first video. Hooray for me, I guess. So, Elisa Lam, if you haven't heard about this game, or at least the big controversy surrounding it, especially around launch, then you, like me, might not have heard about Elisa Lam. For the uninformed, Elisa Lam was a young Canadian girl who tragically passed away in 2013 under mysterious circumstances. If you're unfamiliar with the case, I do recommend reading up on it. Now, if you have played YIIK, especially past chapter 4, you might be able to guess why some people were unhappy. But I don't find it that bad. I don't believe YIIK were trying to profit off the Elisa Lam case. It plays a small, but I will admit important part in kickstarting the main plot. They aren't advertising that it's based on that. They didn't copy the whole case verbatim. The elevator video was tied to semi-story, and the water tower bit was used for the Wind Town water tower. Frankly, I think it's let more people know about Elisa Lam's story, because honestly, I didn't know about it before hearing about the controversy surrounding this game. Andrew Allenson from YIIK Studios stated he wanted to remind people that Elisa Lam was a real person who lost her life, as the news stories at the time were more focused on the fact that people were drinking water contaminated by a corpse. And to be fair to YIIK, they aren't the only ones to reference Elisa Lam in media. They aren't even the first. From the Wikipedia page alone, 4 TV shows, 3 movies, and at least 3 songs have used the case as inspiration, some mere months after the fact. At least one of the songs is even trying to say that the whole thing was a hoax, but they don't seem to get anywhere near as much hate as YIIK does. Yes, Alex is a man-child. He thinks he's really intelligent and uses big words and a condescending tone. He's not as smart as he thinks he is, and his way of talking can be off-putting. He's selfish and self-centered. He's either blind or overly sensitive to criticism. He is self-pitying. He is dense and sometimes unempathetic to others. He is a hipster before hipster was even a term. He has almost no self-awareness. He is immature. So we can all agree that Alex YIIK, at least at the start of the story, is an unsympathetic, unlikable piece of shit. I like him. Let me explain. I like him for the same reasons that I think so many other people hated him. Here are the reasons that people don't like him. Is there anyone watching this who can say that they're not guilty of any of these? I'd wager most people have demonstrated several, probably more than once. Maybe it was only a minute or 2 before you realised you were being childish. Maybe longer, maybe even years. It's okay, we were all teenagers once. I know I'm guilty of many of these. And that's why I like him. He's not some perfect protagonist, he's not chosen, he's just a dude. It's because he's very flawed that I can relate to him. If he had just one small flaw, I think it would feel too token or tacked on. Because he has so many character flaws, many that I've experienced myself, I root for him. I want him to be better, to get over himself. That's also my theory for why he's so hated. I think many players see things in Alex that they didn't or don't like in themselves. And I get it, everyone's done cringy things in the past. But I think it's wrong to hate a character because you hate or hated yourself. I think it's wrong to hate a game because you hate one character in it. And I think it's wrong to hate the devs and attack them because you don't like something in their game. And for what it's worth, to those that say that Alex never learns and no one calls him out on his bullshit, both are untrue. Granted, he starts to grow up quite late into the game, but he does take strides to be better. And some of the time, he does realise he has gone too far and acted like a baby. He'll go into his mind palace, for lack of a better word, and his other selves will scold and berate him for his attitude and behaviour. And the golden alpaca will pop up a few times throughout the game to remind him of some of the more cringy things he has said along the journey. And he does get called out on his tantrums. Not every time, but his friends do call him out a few times when he's acting unreasonable. People also bring up that Alex discovers that he's the most important person in the world, which does nothing to humble him. If these people had played the game and paid attention, or had not cherry-picked their arguments, they might have mentioned that Alex is the threat that will destroy the world. He isn't the hero, he's the unintentional villain. And you can bet that this revelation is humbling. If he didn't have self-doubt or guilt before, I bet he does now. Don't worry, these ones, I feel at least, are fairly minor, and generally the result of people already hating the game, trying to pick at any little thing to hate it more. People have called this out as transphobic, and don't get me wrong, I can see why they'd say that. But I think they're just asking you for your real name, as opposed to a nickname you might go by. I still use my nickname though, oops. They have changed this. The game now asks, what name do you go by? Alex is a ginger, which is fine, but someone calls him a ginger in jest, he jokingly responds, hey, that's our word. Personally, I found it humorous and lighthearted. Some people have claimed that it downplays actual racism. I have no more to say on it, as I'm not the one to speak on this subject. There is a tombstone in a graveyard in the game with the words Satoru Iwata, December 6th, 1959 to July 11th, 2015 in the game, memorializing the late Nintendo CEO. People have said it insulted his memory and allegedly asked Nintendo to take it down. I have no idea how that insults his memory, but stupid is as stupid does, I guess.
This is where things are about to get strange, so please bear with me.
Okay, so this one, while being understandable and relatable, much like Alex, is a bit hard to defend, much like Alex. Put yourself in the dev's shoes. You're a small indie game team. You've spent 4 years working your heart out on a game you created, putting parts of yourself and your life experiences into it, suffering terrible loss along the way. You finally finish it and release it into the world. It's not perfect, but it is yours, and you're happy with how much you've accomplished. And then everyone goes apeshit because the MC is an arsehole. You respond with, well, yes, he is. He's supposed to be unlikable. They ignore you and proceed to tell others not to play it, and review bomb based on other people's opinions. You might get a little upset, especially when players and critics alike seem to miss the point. You might be tempted to call them all idiots. You shouldn't though. Not in public, not online. Unfortunately, that's what Andrew Allinson, director on YIIK, did. The following is an excerpt from episode 144 of the podcast The Dick Show, in which Mr. Allinson featured on as a guest.
Oh, okay, so actually, I've got a thing I prepared about this.
Yeah.
Okay? My mistake was thinking that video games are art. I wanted to make a game about a guy who's like a piece of shit, unlikable character who by the end of the game has to transform. Yeah. But too many gamers, when they look at this, when they play a game, they're so used to having to identify with the character that if they play a game where the main character is unlikable or has to do some bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it. So the thing is, games aren't art. They're toys for children, and it's considered in bad form to talk about anything meaningful or impactful or thought-provoking.
Now, if you've seen some of the negative reviews about this game, you might have seen this quote or even this image. And don't get me wrong, it does look and sound bad. But here's the thing, he didn't say this in a vacuum. People take this bit and make it sound like it was a statement, but he was still ramping up to something.
I was trying to make basically the video game version of like a Chuck Palahniuk novel or a Haruki Murakami novel. And
it's ambitious.
Try and do something a little different, you know? And but it turns out everyone just wants like Ayn Randian written characters where like the main villain is like Wesley Mooch. So you're immediately told what to feel about each character.
I don't get that reference.
The thing was like when you make an unlikable character, people expect Sherlock Holmes or Dr. House. They want flawed heroes, but only to the extent that they're beautiful and intelligent and slightly Aspergery. Yeah. But though they manage to be dicks to everyone and they get away with it because they bring some sort of savantism that saves the world.
Yeah.
So if you make a character who's just like some hipster obsessed with the paranormal, hasn't grown up yet and treats his friends like shit, people immediately feel they don't know how to process this.
Yeah.
But if you put it in a novel, people get it in a novel. But in gamers aren't, you know. And I'm just going to say, though, this is not to say that my game is above any criticism. Like, I know my game has problems. It's not perfect. It's my first 3D game I ever made.
I did read that a lot of people were very harsh.
As you can see, the quote is taken out of context. It was part of a prepared statement and isn't an attack on games or gamers. It's Andrew voicing his frustration on assuming his game was making some political statement. He isn't saying his game's perfect, he acknowledges that there are problems, and some people just won't like the game, and that's fine. But disliking it because of the lie some idiot spread is a little stupid. And he does have some valid points. People do like the asshole savant characters. If you're curious, I would recommend giving the interview a listen. You can still find it online, and the YIIK bit starts at about an hour 45 in, and goes for about 35 minutes, but only the first 20-ish minutes are about YIIK. In summary, don't just trust a statement about a game because it was posted on Kotaku or Niche Gamer, and definitely don't trust the website where all the straw men gather to trade their souls for updates. Mimics. Like in other games, mimics are shit. At least they usually give you a full level up. Money. Money is pointless. Inventory management. There isn't any. The game doesn't tell you how to sort or quick scroll. And key items specifically don't have a separate section. They just sort of sit there gunking up your stuff. Bugs. There are still bugs. I don't think Axe Studios is making any effort to hotfix them out. If they do get fixed, it'll probably be in 1.5, or the hotfix is it after it's released to patch out the bugs that the new features will inevitably bring in. Personally, I couldn't finish the poster side quest on the last playthrough. Like most JRPGs, the ending sort of falls apart. Some things unexplained fully or properly, or unexplained at all. New things are brought up for the first time that go nowhere. There are actually 2 achievable endings in 1.25, not 3. I don't know why Axe said that, but people have data mined the game, and there is currently no known way to get any other ending. Sadly, the second ending, while being a happy ending, doesn't really feel like a good ending, or even the good ending. I get what they were going for, and I get why they put it in, but I must say it does feel a little tacked on. I mentioned it earlier, but the minigames for combat don't feel great. More importantly, they don't feel consistent. Dodging an attack doesn't really feel like a test of skill and timing, it feels more like a dice roll. Monsters. There's very little variety in enemies, almost all enemy attacks feel the same, and there's only 3 real dodge or block minigames. That's a good goddamn question, especially since I've just spent the last 20 something minutes going over its past and present problems. So one of the things I like is how the characters feel more like real people with flaws and character conflicts, and less like one-dimensional caricatures just there to drive the story. The story, for most of the game, isn't about saving the world or killing God, it's about trying to save one person and learning to acknowledge and improve your personality flaws. Also, I find the story pretty interesting and fresh. Not wholly unique, but with enough cool things going for it that it really sucked me in. The combat is pretty rough, but some of the time, you do feel like you have accomplished something with beating a fight. I also have this theory that most games need some truly awful elements to be memorable. As a subjective case study, let's take Prey 2017 and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Prey was a game. It did nothing heinously wrong, decent gameplay, unobtrusive music, fairly interesting combat, mildly engaging story, and people forgot about it, like less than a year after release. Compared to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which had a lot of good points, and the stupidest mechanic for getting new blades. It had a gacha system, in a full-priced, single-player, offline console game. Why would they do it? It makes no sense! But I remember Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The good points, like the great story, interesting characters and fun combat, and the bad, an annoying gacha system that haunts my dreams.
Get out of my head! Get out of my head!
I still haven't gotten the last rare blade. But yeah, YIIK has a fairly interesting setting that has a lot of potential, which the devs are still expanding. Overall, good mouthfeel. So, YIIK is often compared, usually derisively, to a few other franchises, mainly Omori, Persona, Homestuck, and Undertale. While I wouldn't say that Omori isn't a great game in its own right, it does have its own issues. The original Kickstarter project claimed it would be released within 2 years, and while few people actually expect Kickstarter projects to release on time, Omori ended up taking over 6 years before it was released, with several long breaks in communication. Persona? Really? Look, Persona is made by a AAA company with a larger staff. They've been around for decades, and they've made plenty of games, By my count, 6 mainline, 3 1.5s, 7 spin-offs, and a couple of remasters. Not to mention, the first couple were a bit rough and vaguely racist. The Homestuck comparison only really works for the story since it's a webcomic, but I do get it. A complicated and slightly convoluted story with generally cohesive and coherent lore. Undertale? Come on guys, don't do YIIK dirty like that. Alright, so another indie RPG by a small team, fair enough. But I would argue that Undertale was a bit simpler in terms of development, needing only 2D pixel sprites and backgrounds instead of 3D models and spaces. Also, Undertale is self-published, while YIIK had a publisher, which, while providing funding and marketing, does add pressure and time constraints. YIIK also had to deal with a loss in the family during development, needing time for that, which also prompted them to redesign parts of the game, again needing additional time. Your Honour, I ask that ACT Studios be granted leniency when it comes to sentencing. It is only their second game and first 3D game, so they are still learning. They are a small team, only 2 permanent members, the rest are commissioned or contracted I believe, and they are still working on the game, slowly, but still. I don't think people who haven't played the game have any right to shit on it, because they are most likely missing that all-important aspect, context. They are still releasing teasers and trailers, and even some gameplay from the upcoming 1.5 update, and I've got to say, most of it looks pretty good. The story editions, dubbed Deviation Perspectives, they've done it really cool, fleshing out the setting and showing us some of the other realities parallel to the one we see in the game. They are written a little psychotically, but considering that psychosis is a fairly important theme in them, both the benevolent and malevolent kinds, it makes a sort of sense, and makes them a more interesting read in my opinion, if a little vague at times. I gotta say, seeing if and how they tie the deviation perspectives into the plot is the main thing exciting me for the release of 1.5. And if you, viewer, have not played the misunderstood modern postmodern masterpiece that is YIIK 2K, I suggest you try it before judging it, especially if any part of this review spoke to you. It retails on most digital platforms for $29 dues or 19 freedom bucks, but it does seem to be on sale almost half the time. And if you have a humble choice subscription, or know someone who does, you can get it at least 20% off all year round. Just remember, Steam's 2-hour no questions asked refund policy only works if you bought the game from Steam, not if you used a code to get it onto Steam. Lastly, if you're curious about the type of madness this game can bring out in some people, you should check out this Steam guide, Yin Defense of YIIK. It honestly reads like a madman's manifesto. I'll leave a link in the description. I haven't been able to read the whole thing myself, less because of how long it is, and more because it just sort of hurts my brain, but it is entertaining in its own odd way. But before I leave you, I have to ask the question. Why do we live? Why do we die? Why do we suffer? And until next time, remember, the moon can only reflect the light of the sun. The sun can only reflect the light of the holy thief. Okay, that's it. Show's over. Go home. Joe out!